ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be an artist. It's been my dream forever. Um, and I did a lot of drawings and paintings, and I started going to school. And my parents were kind of pushing me into the like graphic design field because they were like, "Oh, you can make money at that," um, which I guess you can. I don't know. Uh, I didn't want to stare at a computer all day, so I kind of did that a little bit, and then I really wanted to be a painter at first. And then I started taking a ceramic class and I was like, whoa, it like blew my mind. I was like, this is so cool. And then I found out that I could draw and paint onto clay also. So I was like, because I was just kind of bored with 2D, I wanted something more. Um, so I was like, this is awesome. And I had a really awesome professor that was very encouraging of like, yeah, you could have a career in this. Like, go for it. Like, it'll be hard, but it's doable. And I was just like, yeah, I want this. And then I just kept doing it and got more and more obsessed with it. So it was awesome. Yeah, so I grew up in Central Arkansas. Um, it's not, it wasn't the greatest place to grow up, but I really like southern summers, even though people are like, wow, this is way hot and humid because it is really awful. But just the noises of the bugs, so like cicadas, crickets, katydids, all of it, and lightning bugs. We don't have those here in Montana, so you don't hear that like southern noise, I guess. So that was really influential to me because obviously I do a lot of insects um, and that sort on my work. Um, Also, this doesn't really technically refer to the South so much, but I grew up, my grandma lived right next door and she really loved gardening and flowers. So she would like take me around her house and be like, this is this and this is this. And we'd do that like every week. Or anytime there was new blooms, she would take me around. And I grew up with a like giant southern magnolia in my yard and like all these other like cool trees, like tulip trees, roses, like all kinds of stuff that was like really like, wow, this is so beautiful. I mean, the southern magnolia flower is like as big as my head. So that was like really influential of just like kind of nostalgic too of growing up in that area and then all those things. Yeah. I think it's multiple things. Like I think some days are different, like some days I really love drawing and I'm like do really well on the drawings. And then there are other days where I'm just like, man, I have like 10 things to decorate and I don't want to do this. And if I get in that mindset, it's really hard for me. Like sometimes I just need to leave and come back another day because I don't do the drawings as well as I would if I was like really into it. Um, but I don't, I really like the decorating, but the making's really rewarding too. Like especially with these oil cans that I just made, like I wasn't sure if they were like how they were going to come out and then I finished them and I was just like, wow, I really like these. Like this was really fun to make. And just that's another reason why I switched to hand building is it's more like tactical. I'm touching it a lot more than throwing. And it's just like kind of like mindless just to like sit there and pinch clay all day. Um, so like I said, it kind of depends on my mood that day. Like it changes. Um, but I think just the feel of that and knowing that I'm making something with my hands, and then when it comes out and I'm like, oh, I really like that. Like that was really fun. And then if it comes out badly, I'm like, oh, I just wasted time. But really, I didn't. But at the time, I'm just like, that was a total waste of like 6 hours. So, um, I get bored with doing just the same things over and over again. So really, it was just kind of switching it up. Um, I'm really interested in like just life cycles, and I mean, not that I'm happy that animals are dead. I just think they're really interesting, like the anatomy of it and just the way you see roadkill and what happens to that. and I'm a collect. I like collect things that I find out in the woods and stuff. Um, so I just kind of wanted to do more imagery on like life cycles, and I get more into a little bit of politics, whereas like how humans affect um, the death of animals and like kind of that life cycle also and that relationship. So I just like to change it up sometimes. Like I've been kind of going back to insects lately, um, just to do something different. Yeah, I mean, it always inspires me, and I'm kind of inspired by a lot of things, nature, and I just like people watching inspires me, just like people's habits. But I've always loved to be outside, and I used to play in my grandmother's garden and like make like mud sculptures all the time. Like I loved it. So it's kind of like funny and ironic that I'm a ceramic artist now, but yeah, I just really I like being in solitude and I like being outside, away from like hustle and bustle of the city. And I really like engaging in outdoor activities. Like it really challenges you as a person, especially with like more difficult things, especially here because I've started mountain biking and it's like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And so that's fun too. And I mean, it totally doesn't relate, but I guess in ceramics too, I'm challenging myself and pushing my career and pushing how I make my work and ideas and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I just like every time I go outside, I have like so many photos of on my phone of plants and birds and dead animals that I find and bugs and like all kinds of stuff that I'm like, oh man, I want to do this. Like recently I went to Idaho to go climbing and it was in the desert, so there was like nothing but sagebrush. And I saw these like I think it was a sage grouse. I'm not really sure. I called it a desert chicken because it kind of sounded like a chicken and it walked with its head like this. So I was like, oh my God, I really want to draw those now because they're really goofy looking. And then I saw a bunch of pronghorn and I was like, ooh, those are really cool. That would be fun to draw too. Um, so I just like, and then also just being away from life for a few days and kind of like regrouping my thoughts is really good for me too, to kind of think about, okay, what do I want to do next? That's important to me also. And that's why I like to get outside too. Yeah. So I started with porcelain just because I was drawing really fine lines and wanted like pops of color, and that comes out really well with white clay. I also had heard a lot of things about how challenging porcelain can be, and I wanted to like learn how to work with it. Um, and then as I kind of changed my work and started hand building more, I dip most of my stuff in white slip or use some kind of combo of a white slip and the red clay. And it just creates so much depth in that. Like you can see through the slip, you can see the clay underneath, and then I layer everything on top, and you can kind of see through all of those layers. So then it just adds more depth to the work rather than just a white surface drawn on, which it just wasn't interesting to me or in what I wanted to do anymore. So I just changed it. So now I'm like red clay forever. All right, so when I first started doing these designs, I had to like write out instructions on how I layered them because it's a lot sometimes. But basically, once I make the cup, with these particular ones, so I make the cup, let it get leather hard, and then for this one, I draw out my imagery on tracing paper or just a piece of white paper. I used to draw directly on the cup. But then if you like mess it up or something, you have to reslip it or do something to fix it. So, and then so when I do it on tracing paper or copy paper, I can just make copies and reuse the same designs, so I don't have to redraw it every time. Um, so for this one, I trace on the moth, and then the head goes onto the bottom of the cup. So I trace that on first, and it's just like a light indentation, so I can see where it's at. And then I painted the colors on. So those are all colored slips. So I just made a big batch of white slip and split it up and then added mason stains at different percentages to get different tones of same colors. Um, and then, so after I do that, let it dry. And then I use a wax resist around the moth, so where the red clay is showing through. I use the wax resist on that. And then once that's dry, I dip the whole thing in slip, in a white slip. And then, so that white slip's the same base as the colored slips. Um, and then let it dry. And then there's a lot to this book. Um, so then I go over the wax resist where the moth is with an X-Acto blade. So I draw in the design with an X-Acto knife. And then, so sometimes I just go ahead and fill it in with a black underglaze. I use underglazes on the lines just because they're a little more vibrant, so you can see them a little better. And then I just fill it in with a paintbrush, and then I just wipe it back with a sponge, and the wax, keeps it there so I don't wipe it off. And then for the flowers, I put those on last. So those are slip transfers. So I painted those with colored slips on a newsprint. And then I put, for these ones, I think I used a yellow slip for the background. So you paint the design, let it dry, and then I put a yellow slip on top of that. And don't let it dry totally, get it like leather hard. And then it's kind of like a decal or like a temporary tattoo. I just put it on the pot and then like rib over it, and then just peel it back. And then those can be kind of cool too because they leave little like spots that you miss. So it looks kind of, I don't know, not totally all there. And then I just like that. I like the contrast between the like abstract blurriness of that versus the really fine line drawing. And then I really like printmaking, so it kind of looks like mono prints or something. And then after that, I just go back, like those little dots are just the tip of a slip trailing bottle that I just stamped in, and then I painted those with a black underglaze. And then so after it's been bisqued, I sand them, I wet sand them so they're nice and smooth. And then sometimes I add underglazes for some more color, depending. Like the black on the moth, I added after bisque. And then I put like a black wash over all of it. So it fills in those lines, just makes it not so bright and white. And then for this one, I just used I used a liner glaze on the inside and then a clear glaze on like a couple of the flowers just so they kind of pop. And then everything else is just unglazed. I just sand it really smooth so that it feels really nice. And then this was fired to cone 6. But I do different temps depending on the clay I'm using. So, but yeah, it's a lot. That it depends on how in depth, like the cups that I went through on how I decorate that. It goes a lot quicker than what it sounded like. For like the first one of that, it took longer because I was figuring it out. But now that I have it figured out, I mean, making it takes a little while because I have to like wait in between layers. But if I didn't have to wait for anything or wait for drying or anything, it'd be from start to finish before bisque. Oh man, maybe like 3 to 4 hours max on something that has a lot of decoration. Something that's less decoration, it's not so long. And it, like plates don't take as long to make, and mugs don't. They take a long time sometimes, depending on the shape. But just like a basic cylinder, I think those are like 3 coils pinched up and a handle and a bottom. So I can make it pretty quickly if I didn't have to wait in between anything. So it just depends. It can be really lengthy. I've gotten better at it, so I can do it a lot quicker now. especially now that I like save all my designs and I just go back and kind of pick out what I want. That makes it a lot quicker. You know, I don't really know what triggered it. When I was in Rochester, New York at Flower City Art Center, I was there for 2 years. So I did one show and it was all thrown stuff that was a little bit altered. Um, and then the next show, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to hand build everything. And I haven't hand built since like my first, I don't know, first year of college. So it was definitely a challenge. I had a lot of things break, crack. But I find that for me, just because, I mean, I think if I just threw more, I'd get better at it, obviously. But um, making larger pieces in different shapes is a little easier sometimes with hand building. And then you don't have to center a piece of clay. I also like kind of the imperfections of that too. It's not totally symmetrical. Um, and then as I got more into my surfaces of dead animals and those kinds of imageries, um, I thought the like hand touch, like the fingerprints and the pinch looked a little better with my designs. I felt like a refined, smooth, thrown surface was a little too refined and pretty for my work. Like I I don't mean this in like conceited way at all, but I like my work is pretty to the eye, and then you look closer and you're like, oh, that's a dead animal, or oh, that's bones, or a dead insect, or something. So I thought that the like kind of, I don't know, that like tangible look went better with what I was trying to get across, and my imagery just looked better on it, I thought. So I guess someone would say that I make like fine art pots, which in a sense, yes, because of just how long it takes to make something, but I want people to use my pots every day. So they're also seeing that imagery and thinking about those things every time they pick that up and use it. And it's also a very like a sense of intimacy also because you know it's really close to you. Put your lips on it, like that kind of plays into like, oh, maybe I should think about all the plastic I'm using today, or you know, that kind of stuff too. It's a little more intimate than just a sculpture sitting on a pedestal. Not, I love that, but it's just a little uh, more of a relationship. I do sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't have like any inventory in case someone does want to buy something. I don't have anything for them. So I'll be like, okay, I'll make like 5 mugs and a few plates and some bowls. And then I'll make them. And then while they're drying out, I usually like in my sketchbook, I'll write like, okay, these 5 mugs, I'm going to put moths on them. Or like, I'm going to put moths on these 2 plates, I'm going to do this. Depending on like for the tea place, some stuff I try to keep kind of um, like not the same, but similar designs. So it kind of all goes together. So I'll just like write out like, okay, I'm going to do this on this. And then I get all my designs ready. And then when they're ready to decorate, I just go through them all. I try not to leave myself too much to decorate at once because I get really burnt out by it in a day. So I kind of like make a few, decorate, make a few, decorate. Um, and then other days, like for this resident show, I totally procrastinated and I was like, okay, I got to make like a few bit larger things, and I made some like clay replica of like old school oil cans, like metal oil jugs. So I was like, okay, I want to make these. So I just get like ideas sometimes. I'm like, okay, I really want to make this. And then other times I'm like, oh, I need some inventory and I don't make bowls a lot, so I'm just going to practice bowls. So it kind of just depends on what's going on in my life, if I need money, you know, like that kind of stuff. So it is kind of sporadic sometimes. I work like close to full time. So I work like 4 or 5 days a week until like 5:30, and then I go to my studio. So, um, so I get home, I eat food, go to the studio for a few hours. So it's difficult sometimes because some days I only get like 3 hours, so I have to like really focus and try to get work done. And sometimes I just like not into it. I just get there and I'm like, I don't want to be here today. And then when I'm off, I usually kind of just hang out at home or go do something, and then I go for like 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours. Um, Unless I just have like a studio push that I need to do, I go a little longer. Um, but yeah, usually when I get there, I just kind of make a to-do list, what I need to get done that day. And because I'm hand building now, I can work on like a lot of things at once because I coil build and like pinch. So I have to wait in between layers for them to dry up a little bit so I can add the next layer. So I usually just go like an assembly line through stuff. And then when I don't have deadlines or anything, I kind of just go in and be like, what do I want to make today? Um, and then I just pick something and then I work on some stuff and then just keep going. Little Rock was, I mean, that was when I was first moving away from home and like really like out of school, like, oh my God, what do I do now? Um, so that was just kind of like a stepping stone of like fear because I'm like moving to this new place by myself and I had no idea what was going to happen. And I wasn't super confident in myself because, I just got out of school. I didn't know what to expect. Um, so that was just uh, like, I don't know, going off on my own and being like, okay, I have to do this. Because there wasn't really a lot for me there. And I got to Rochester. I was really scared at first, but I didn't like the city that much because I'm not really a city girl. And the snow there is like absolutely awful. Um, but the summers are very nice. But the community at the studio was so awesome. Like I still talk to the directors there like every week. They always like text me and ask me what's going on. And and for that, I think I just became more confident in myself as an artist because that was the first time I had had like an actual residency with a show that a lot of people came to, and I was just like, oh my God, like what? Like why are you here? Like it was just a mind-blowing experience and it just was like really amazing and eye-opening thinking like, wow, I just put together a show that I wasn't too sure about and everyone liked it and like maybe I can do this. Like this is possible. And I have been wanting to move to Missoula for like years. Um, so I finally made it happen. Thank you to the Clay Studio. Um, and coming here is, I haven't quite figured it out because I've only been here for about a year. But the community here is really, really awesome. I coming from, Little Rock is pretty diverse. Rochester is really diverse. Coming here, I was a little scared because I was like, oh no, what am I getting myself into? And but it turned out like I love it here so much. I've like made so many friends, which I'm like very introverted and quiet. I don't like talk to people a lot, so it's like been really awesome for that aspect. And just having so in Rochester, I only had like one or two other residents with me, and here I have four. So it's really cool to be a part of that too. And I have all of these people that are, doing the same thing I'm doing and trying to figure out what they're doing. So it's nice to have that. And like I said, the community at the Play Studio is so awesome, and there's just so much there. And I'm just like scheming my way to like never leaving. But um, but yeah, I think I'll figure out my takeaway once my show goes up and kind of think back on my years here. But it's been really great so far. Um, yeah, I have so many mugs in my cabinet, and like my boyfriend will make coffee. He's like, "What mug do you want?" And I'm like, "Oh, I want this one." Um, for that, it's just kind of like whatever I'm in the mood for, like how I want to enjoy that. Like I have some mugs that the handles aren't so great, and then I have some that are like super comfortable. Um, so yeah, that's just like randomly. But if I like my ultimate goal in life is to make the most comfortable mug in the world. Like that is my goal. Um, so an ideal mug would be one with a really nice lip that like sits well and doesn't drip down, you know? And I really like one finger handles. I have a mug by Justin Donoforo, I think is his name. Um, and it's hand built. And when you first look at it, I was just like, oh, this doesn't look that great. Because I judged totally by the handles. And then I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, I have to have this. Because it's a one finger handle and it fits like I wish I had a mug to hold right now, but it fits so perfect and this finger like rests so perfectly there. And it's just like a little circle handle. And that's how I choose my mugs too when I buy them is the lip and the handle. And like if it's a one finger handle where that sits, because if it's too low and it's heavy, it might be a little weird. Or if like it's too thin and then you have like a really hot liquid so you can't put your finger against it. So that's like all the things I think about. And that's what I think about too when I make mugs for coffee or tea too, is like how you handle them, if they're hot or cold, and how that goes. As cliche as it sounds that we're in Missoula, Montana, but Julia Galloway was my like very first influence. I saw her work and I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. Um, because her drawings are like very fine lines, very fun. And I used to do soda firing a lot too, and that's what she does. So I was like really into her work for a really long time. And I take a lot of influences from like 2D work, a lot of printmaking and illustration too, like for compositions of drawings. But one of the illustrators I really like, her name is Lauren Marks. I think she's on Instagram as Lauren Marks Art. Um, but she does wonderful work. Ceramic artist, oh my God, there's so many. I mean, there are some that I just are influenced by their forms. There are others that I'm just influenced by their surfaces. But yeah, Julie Galloway is like a real big one for me. And like Jen Allen and Kristen Kiefer were like my first influences. I'm not totally sure. I was considering doing a post, like applying for a post back at UM, just because I really like Missoula and I want to stay for a little bit. Because my boyfriend and I just got an apartment that we really love, and like I don't want to leave it just yet. Um, so I don't know, and I don't know if you've heard about Wildfire Ceramic Studio. Also, shouting out to them. Um, I'm good friends with like Sarah and Chrissy and Stephanie that are there. Um, I've also thought if they have a space available to apply for that afterwards, just to kind of do my own thing, save some money for what's next. Um, and like I said, I've wanted to live in Montana forever, just to be in the mountains because I love it here. Um, so I know Red Lodge is a good residency, and that's something that I'm interested in. So that might be like the next step um, in, I don't think right away, but maybe a couple years. Um, and I was talking to one of the new residents yesterday about grad school. So I think that's going to be in my future within the next like 5 to 10 years, probably. I just don't know when or where. I kind of have to think about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, basically, what I'm doing now, I want to keep making ceramics and I want to be outside. So that's my next step. I also have a few mugs at Radius Gallery, in the gallery and their online gallery. It's just the same mugs. I have some work at the Clay Studio online and in their gallery. And I don't really use Facebook much, but I'll give you my Facebook name. It's Lane Chapman Pottery, or Lane Chapman for personal Facebook. And then my Instagram handle is Lane Chapman, but with 3 E's. Yeah, so Lane, 3 E's, Chapman is my Instagram. And that's what I use the most and what I post most of my work at. So if you need to contact me, that's the best way to do it.